Hello, everyone. We are so delighted to have you join us today. I'm Gail Brechting, President of ACB, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this installment of ACB Connects. These sessions are sponsored by the Association of Concert Bands, an international nonprofit organization whose mission is to foster excellence in concert band music through performance, education, and advocacy. We have just a few items before we begin today's discussion. ACB Connects is being recorded. Today's session will be archived along with all the other previously recorded sessions on the ACB Connects page on our website. If you enjoy that and you want to get to the opportunity to see some of our other ones, please look on our website for that. We welcome your questions. If you have any questions or comments for our guest today, submit them in the chat addressed to everyone, and as many as time allows, we will address. With us today is Dr. Cynthia Johnston Turner, and we're looking so forward to learning all about her in this session. Welcome, Cindy.
Oh, thank you. I'm delighted to be here, Gail. Well, hi, everybody.
Yeah, we're so thrilled to have you here. And I'm just going to start off with how I happened to meet you. I knew of you, and I had the opportunity to see you at the Kappa Kappa Psi National Convention in Grand Rapids, Michigan, 2 summers ago. I was the new president, and I only live about 30 minutes from Grand Rapids, Michigan. So it was a no-brainer to come over because we have an affiliation with Kappa Kappa Psi. And then I had the opportunity to actually get to meet you. You were guest conducting the ensemble that was put together, the honors band that was being put together there. And I had the opportunity to come up and meet you through Alex Shapiro because you were doing one of her works. And she introduced me to you. And you looked me in the eye after finding out that who I was and why I was there. And you said, you know, community music is going to save the world. And so here we are, 2 years later, finally making some things happen. So I'd like to welcome you. I'm so glad that you made time in your busy schedule to talk with our members and to make this recording for our community band world. We appreciate it so much. So would you be willing to just tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, I mean, hi, everybody. I mean, Gail sort of started this with, she said, wow, you've just had an amazing life. And I said, it sounds like it's over. It's just like, oh my God.
No. Not trying to kill you off here or anything.
I mean, I don't know how far back we want to go. I have just returned. I'm a year and a half into this new role as a dean in the Faculty of Music at Wilfrid Laurier University, at the Faculty of Music in Waterloo, Ontario. That is a role I never, ever, ever imagined myself being interested in, let alone accepting. Perhaps more on that later. Before that, I was
absolutely.
It's like a dean. Are you kidding me? I was director of bands at the University of Georgia, Go Dogs. I did that for 7 years, where there, depending on how many you count, there are like 8 or 9 bands, including the 450-piece Redcoat Marching Band. I didn't do that group, thank goodness. But they let me conduct the national anthem in front of all those fans and coordinating a F1 ever, flyover jet. Absolutely thrilling. Like,
I'm sure.
College sports in the States,
absolutely,
especially football as a whole. Wow, that's maybe more on that later too, because that's something. And before that, I was director of wind ensembles at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York, and that was amazing. And why would you ever leave Cornell? Every job I've had, I'm like, why would you leave this job? It's perfect. And before that, I was doing my doctorate at a DMA in conducting at Eastman School in Rochester, except that I started as a PhD in music education. But then I was following Don Hunsberg around like a puppy, and he finally said, like, ugh, get away. And do you want to conduct something? So I said, I guess so. And I conducted Karel Husa's Al Fresco with the wind orchestra, which is a quote unquote second band at Eastman, still pretty darn good. And it must have gone well. Karel Husa was in the audience, and he loved it. And Don said, you should be a conductor. And that was like, Domine nobis patris. Like, really? Okay. So I switched from a PhD in music ed to a DMA, and that turned out to be wonderful. And before that, I was a high school music educator in Dundas, Ontario for 10 years. Why would you ever lose that? That was I leave that job. That was my dream job. And I loved it. But I just kept learning how much I didn't know and got hungry for more. So, yeah. And then before that, I was in Switzerland teaching choral music and computers and how far do we want to go back? Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I don't think I read that part. I mean, yes, I knew you were in Switzerland, but I didn't realize that. Was your family involved with music in the community at all?
Not really. I mean, my mom could not hold a tune, and I actually don't believe people when they say that, but it's true.
Me too.
She just could not match pitch. And the more training I got in music, the more that frustrated me, and the more I tried to help her. But I think really it was here, like some person, some awful person in her childhood said that to her, and then she just believed it.
Yeah.
And she had a mental block. And my dad, not so much. He was into cars and snowmobiles. But there's a rumor that my grandfather was a mean mandolin player back in the day. So maybe it skipped a generation. I don't know. But
well, there you go.
While my sister and brother were into cars and motorbikes and snowmobiles, and at about age 8 or 9, I begged my parents for a piano. We were not a wealthy family, so I got a little digital keyboard to which you could not separate me for, hours on end. So that was that.
Well, it's certainly part of what your path was supposed to be. I mean, I think a lot of us can go back and say those same types of things, if there was something, but there was something within you that loved music, and look where you are today. How wonderful is that? I was looking at a couple of the questions that came through when people registered. We had 2 or 3 that came in, and one of them was from a person that said that they felt like their sanity was saved during the pandemic because they were musicians and they were able to play like duets with a friend and things like that. And it's just something I want to kind of keep in our heads as we talk about how, community music could save the world. I mean, that's a little bit of an example throughout this really difficult time that our world has had in these past 2 or 3 years. And so that's why I asked you if you had that background at all through your family as a community musician in any way. But did you grow up in the areas? I mean, was there community music in your community as a child or as a teenager?
No, not. I mean, I guess we should define community music, right?
Right. Good point.
I actually just before this or earlier today, I went to Chat GPT and I said, "What is community music?" If you have not explored Chat GPT, check it out. I mean, I put in also a mission statement for a music school and higher education, and I read it. That's pretty good. Like it's amazing what this. What AI is doing right now. And basically it says community music is any kind of music making, participatory music making that is situated in the community and interacting with the community, which is like, well, that's pretty good. Yeah. But no, as a kid, I mean, I did not have a terrific childhood. One of my favorite quotes is from Tom Robbins, "Never too late to have a happy childhood." So I just keep that in my back pocket. But no, it was not a particularly happy childhood. I remember ice skating. I remember going to hockey games to watch my sister, but the music all happened with me in this little keyboard. And then when I got into middle school and picked up a clarinet, that was that. And that was my first experience of making music with other people.
Okay.
That just was through your school. This is amazing. Yeah.
Right. So it was through a school band then, and probably part of the reason you were interested in music education. Being a music educator myself for so many years, you see that happen with children who really love doing something, and that was perhaps clarinet playing for you or mine, and that's why they're driven to do things they like, and that's where it went. But that's really great. I did read that you through your Cornell, when you were there, you did a lot of service learning expeditions and things of that nature. Can you just expound on that a little bit as to what that is for our members?
Yeah, I mean, the person who wrote in that playing music kind of saved them during the pandemic, and I'm not sure we can say post-pandemic now. I mean, who knows what era we're in, but I totally get that. I mean, not a lot of people feel that way because the collective music making was on Zoom, and that's very difficult. But I remember in high school and middle school being safe in the band room. These were my people. This is where I hung out. This is where I, before school I was there. Any quote unquote spare I had, I was there. I just enjoyed practicing, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, part of my high school band experience was, I don't know how far, this is like very controversial, but I would say it anyway. My high school band director, who just passed away, unfortunately, was also my stepfather. And they met because my mom, I was dating his son in high school. He was a trumpet player, and he was older than I was, which was like, ooh. And my then band director said, well, I need to meet your mother. He thought that I should have my own clarinet and saxophone, and also he wanted to meet the mother of the person that was dating his son. Anyway, long story short, we all got together, and of course that my stepbrother and I are now very close, but it didn't work out, obviously.
Yeah.
Anyway, every year that high school wind ensemble went on tour, and it was during March break, and we always went to the United States, and it was often 10 to 12 days. Life-changing experiences. Like, we got on a bus, we went to the States, we got off the bus, we changed our clothes, we played a concert, we went home with our host families. Not a lot of you can't do this anymore. This concept of staying with host families is there are lots of schools that won't let you do it anymore.
Right. There are
whatever reasons, all the reasons. Got on the bus the next morning, drove X amount hours, got off the bus and did the same thing with a new group of people. That was the first time I saw trophies in a band room. That freaked me out as a Canadian. It's like, what's going on with trophies in the band room? I don't get that. What do we, you won a competition? That's weird. More on that later, maybe. Anyway, all through high school, I did that. And then I did it when I was a high school band director. When I got to Cornell, we added the element of service learning, which meant the very first time we did it, my husband's cousin had retired to Costa Rica, and she reached out and said, I found this little school, Escuela, in northern Costa Rica. They've got 20 kids sharing 6 instruments. Did I have any ideas? And I put it to the band leadership at Cornell, and I said, what do you think? Long story short, we got 50 instruments donated. Partnered with the local music retail store and repair shop, who fixed the instruments for free. Because he liked the project. And we went to Costa Rica and toured around the country and we donated these 50 instruments in Guanacaste. And I don't know if anybody's done any service work, but I had this impression that we were going to go there and save this little school, and weren't we wonderful? And within about 10 minutes, 15 minutes of being there, it was like, okay, who's getting more out of this?
Yes, exactly.
Right? I mean, this is like, see, I get.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's very emotional, and it's what you see these children. Oh, I understand. I absolutely understand.
Yeah. Anyway, we went back 7 times. So there are over 350 instruments in Costa Rica, thanks to the Cornell Wind Ensemble. And we worked with hundreds of kids. And then I ended up being a consultant with their version of El Sistema, which is called CNEM. And I worked with conductors because they wanted to do an El Sistema kind of thing, but they didn't have the, like, how do we do this, right? So I worked with a lot of conductors, and anyway, that's what the service lines are. Yeah, it was unbelievable. Unbelievable. I still get emails from some of those Cornell kids that just say that blew my mind, and I think about it
absolutely a lot. I think that's so special, and I think it's one of those things that music sometimes and I'm just going to say this, community music sometimes falls short on that, in that they don't realize that opportunity could be there for them in their own communities, and they could step into that if they chose to find a group. It doesn't have to be anything big, and sometimes it's not even a school group. Sometimes it's an elderly group or something like this that has that need and that desire to be involved. So the service learning, I think, in many ways, goes hand in hand with community music, the concept of it saving the world in some ways.
Yeah. Now, it's just, there's one thing I want to say, because it's interesting that you say that. Sure. I was criticized when I went to Georgia and we did a similar tour to Panama. And the criticism was, why aren't you touring Georgia?
Oh, sure. Yes,
Fascinating,
I understand
right?
that. Yep. Mhm.
And so we ended up doing a lot of tours in Georgia, in the
Sure,
state of
to help
Georgia,
there.
but we also went to 2 Georgia prisons.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
For which we were also criticized. Like, why are you taking music to people who are in jail? Well, I don't know, grace, a little beauty.
Absolutely.
But,
Absolutely. Hope. Yeah,
all this
for
stuff.
sure.
Anyway,
Well,
yeah.
I absolutely understand what you're saying. And I have another whole long story I'm not going to go into because we're interviewing you. But very quickly, I have been one of the people that's supporting a orphanage music school in Uganda. And
Cool.
I got started with that during the pandemic because of being able to do all of this sitting at home all the time. What are you going to do? You can't just sit and help. So, and we have just through my band alone have raised over $10,000, and I've sent trumpets, and we're getting ready to send some trombones. So I understand where you're at, and it does move and change you as the person doing it as well. We were criticized too in our own community. Well, what about our own people who are, don't have food and this and that, and yet we want music in the whole world, and so that's how we try to help when we can. What brought you back to Ontario? Because you were out in Georgia and New York and everywhere.
Yeah, I loved. We're dual citizens now, so I'm dual citizen of the United States, born in Canada. And what brought me back to Canada is that it was during the pandemic. A lot of people, as I understand it, had sort of existential crises during the pandemic, right? A lot of musicians, a lot of artists. And I wouldn't say I had an existential crisis, but this job opportunity came up, and was asked to apply. And no, I'm not going to apply. I'm not going to be a dean. I don't like deans.
Not you.
I just don't like that. And I love conducting. I like working with students and professional groups. And my husband actually talked me into it. He's got grandkids. I guess we have grandkids now. And he wanted to come back to Canada. He's a little bit worried about what's happening in the United States. I said, well, there's a lot. Canada's not perfect. Give me a break.
Right.
But anyway, here we are, and now I'm looking at the snow, which I did not see in Georgia. So,
so that's part of it. But the thing that I was really moved by was some of the things that are going on there at Laurier, and that, first of all, a university I had personally not heard of before, but now I'm blown away by the things that you're able to do. It seems very out of the box in so many ways, and maybe it's just because I've always been in the United States and haven't really ventured out past that too much. But some of the things that you are doing is really pretty incredible. And one of them, and we'll just maybe briefly touch on this and then come back to it in a circle, is the degrees in community music that this university offers. And I'll just let you discuss that.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, there are many reasons it came back, and I wanted to do this job. It wasn't just that my husband was like, let's go back to Canada. The closer I got to understanding the why of Laurier music and the who and what was going on, the more I went, oh, okay, this is an innovative place with innovative people. Right. And I have a lot of interest in music curriculum. I think that a lot of conservatories, I don't even like that word, but a lot of conservatories are still teaching the curriculum of the 50s, right? Theory 1, Theory 2, History 1, History 2, Bach, Beethoven, Brahms, and, figured bass. Oh my gosh. And so, the community music at Laurier is approximately 9 years old. I don't know if Lee Willingham's going to listen to this, but he's going to go, no, it's 10 years. It's approximately 9 years old. Okay. It is the only bachelor, master's, and now PhD in community music in the world. And it's a relatively new field of study. I mean, it's as I understand it, been ongoing in the UK for some time. There's some really interesting and powerful intellects around this subject of inclusivity who has the right to make music and do music and who doesn't, who have been the gatekeepers and why and all that sort of stuff. There's been really some interesting thinking about that in the UK and now in Canada and hopefully in the States. So yeah, we're excited. We're very excited about it.
Absolutely. And it's exciting for those of us, I think, in organizations like Association of Concert Bands. We are truly the roots of community music in our communities. It's an outgrowth of wonderful high schools, probably, and the whole big band movement throughout the United States, at least, and many other countries. Not all. You get into Europe, and it's very different. That's how I've met a few more people. Is that they don't have the school music in their schools, and so they have to do it after school and things like this. So they feel they're not drawing on all of the students that's possible, as well as the type of curriculum, the depth of curriculum we can get into and here. And so I think that's part of that. But I was absolutely thrilled to see that there was someplace that it mattered enough for it to become something that they wanted other people to learn about, other than just participate in, to have degrees in, to help spread the joy of letting it be for everyone rather than the learned. Do you know what I'm saying? And I think that alone is going to do some things. I did get to meet Lee, and he, well, virtually, and got the opportunity to get some of his books and to read through a lot of the research that he has done, which is incredible. And that's the thing I'm excited about. Is it can be so many things. I'm going to ask you, what in your life, in your mind, what is community music to you? Like, let's talk that a little bit. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, it's funny. When I first got there, I said, there's no definition of community music on the website. Give me a definition of community music. I'd like it on the website. I'd like it to be able to speak, in a learned way, or at least a half intelligent way when I'm on the elevator and people say, what is community music? And I got the 4 people I asked, I have 4 different definitions, right? So to me, I think the correct answer to this is I don't know yet. I think a possible direction Laurier could take in the undergrad is commercial and contemporary music with a constant eye on being in the community for the community. I think in the master's and the PhD, we can talk about what it means or what community music could mean. I think we could explore questions like, why is it that you have to have really exceptional chops and take an audition to get into music in higher education? What other programs are doing that? Architecture, maybe art, not business, not humanities. So we demand a very high level of music making of students to get into conservatories and higher ed, and that's fine.
There's a place for it, but
but the other thing is that we and I've been part of these schools, is that we audition and accept students based on populating the large ensembles.
Instead,
that's weird. Said one of the large ensemble conductors. Like, why? What do you mean we only need X amount of trumpets? Because like it's backwards kind of thinking. So I think that community music, at least at Laurier, has had aspects of social justice. And what is social justice? Isn't all justice social? I don't know. I mean, I love having these conversations, but it has had elements of that. We've recently come to the conclusion that community music at Laurier needs to focus on music, the music part of community music.
I could see why.
But always keeping an eye on what community music means and for whom, and to students, and how they come to their own definitions. So I mean, that's a long-winded way of saying I'm not sure yet. But that's good in some ways, that it isn't like this is the only way, because when it's only in a box, there's people out there going, well, that's not the box I want to be in, or
or that's not my community music box kind of a thing. So that's part of it. I know some of the things that I read in the books that he has authored and things, you have to start pretty basic and go back to like the native peoples. I mean, that's where some of it, I think, was what community music is. I mean, you look at the bands that were from the mining, you know, your Black Dyke Band and your various groups like this. There was a purpose behind that. Drum corps was started because they wanted to keep kids off the streets in the cities. That's how it started. And so there's that social side of it that's so very important, that I think that, to me, that's what community music is in some ways, is that it's open to everyone if they choose to, and you find a way to help them be part of that. And then how does it affect your community? You know?
Yeah. Two things on that, Gail, because you're so right. One is, if you had asked me this question even like 3 or 4 years ago, should we focus on the intrinsic or the extrinsic value of music? I would say, of course, the intrinsic, music for music's sake. Of course. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, there are so many extrinsic important aspects of participatory music making that matter so much. Because one of the questions is, you know, why are we always fighting to keep music in the schools?
Right, exactly.
Well, don't let me forget to talk about New Horizons bands, because I'm sure you know about that, and
Yes.
I'd love to talk about the value of New Horizons band, but
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I get a little bit angry at these music advocacy folks that say music is different. What happens in the music classroom is different. What happens in band is different. What happens in an orchestra and choir is different. Really, it's not. I mean, if people are pedagogically paying attention in math and science, they flipped their classrooms years ago, right? They are doing things, you know, that you know, there's stuff happening at home, the lecture or the reading or whatever, and then you come together in the class and you problem solve, right?
Exactly. Yes.
It's so much more active and engaging and interesting. But really, in band, I'll stick to band because that's my thing, but I'll also speak to orchestra as well. And I've said this before, we stand on a box with a stick, literally telling them what to do, when to do, and how to do it. We even choose their textbook. We don't let them participate in that, based on the contest, based on the festival, based on what we think they need to learn. And so there's really, I don't think, well, it is different what's happening in the band room, not all of them, in that it's not as forward thinking as what's happening in a lot of other classrooms, at least in high school and middle school.
Right.
But anyway, that's a little bit controversial, but I believe it because I've seen it.
Well, and I think I mean, I've done this long enough to see things, the pendulum swings, and then it goes up, and then they do it this way, and then they come back and they do it this way. And so, you know, once in a while you get to be in the middle for a few years where it's pretty locked into what you're happy with, you know, and especially when it comes to making music with students, or any art for that matter. Fighting in the arts has always just been part of a job of an art teacher, finding money and things, and in our communities. So I'm going to go back to ACB. We are community groups, adult ensembles, and finding the funding, finding the finances, you know, how is that done? And I will just say, and I'm sure you too, because you've been involved in the arts your whole life as well. If you believe it, you can do it. You can find a way normally somehow to make it better than it was. Now, it might not be exactly the top line, but it certainly is going to be something that people are going to experience something from educationally, and then musically, and then within their heart, that's going to make them happier. And I mean, we saw that happen virtually in all of the things that we did. Even though it wasn't very much fun, you couldn't be with your friends playing, but you could be at least on a screen with everybody else, and we all made it through. I believe that I know with my ensemble, I conduct an 80-piece wind ensemble myself. My goal during the pandemic was to truly just keep that community together. Even if we didn't get all the music like we did week to week to week before that. But my goal for those 2 years was just to keep my community, being my band, together, connected somehow with communication, whatever that was. So there you go. communication and community seem to have the first 3-4 letters the same. So I really think that that has a lot to do with it. Okay, well, thanks for sharing that part of it. One of the things in the questions that I asked you about was, it's compelling how humans need to commune together, their free time, how they share their joys. In your experiences, I'm sure you have experienced that. Yes, yours are at a very high level. You're at the academic level of universities and Navy band and things like this. But that it's all relative, whether it be a community ensemble of New Horizon members, or whether it be the Navy band that you get a chance to conduct at Midwest. It's the same thing, compelling how they need to be together and in their free time and share that joy. Have you seen that in all the different levels that you've worked as well?
Truthfully, no.
Okay.
I mean, I think some of the professional groups I've done, not necessarily the Navy band, there is I could talk about this a long time, but there develops a cynicism, right? As soon as you start getting, and this isn't everybody. I mean, I know a lot of professional musicians who just dig it every day, and aren't I lucky? And are you kidding? They're paying me for this. But I also know professional musicians who have grown cynical, like, oh, I got this gig, and oh, we got to work with this soloist, and my paycheck, and the union, and blah blah blah. I mean, it can be a different experience conducting a professional group, for sure. Not the Navy band. They were fantastic. But it's their job, right? It's a different thing. I mean, I think that I have experienced the same kind of cynicism when students are getting their master's and doctorate in performance, and they have to go to ensemble, right? They have to go to ensemble because it's part of their it's part of their curriculum, part of it's their core requirement or whatever. Okay. And they're not necessarily wanting to go to ensemble, which is that's fascinating, right? That the first time I went to Eastman, I experienced that and went, wow, they just want to be in a practice room playing to get good, so they can do what? Get in an ensemble. Like
reality check here.
Yeah. So I mean, all this to say is that I think that if you want to take the love of learning out of a kid, you put them in school. That is also a controversial thing to say, but I think that we have, in many ways, when we put kids in schools and we start grading them and we start testing them, especially if they're standardized tests, they go for the trophy, the test, the grade, the star, instead of remembering when they came out of the womb, they had a curiosity about learning. Right. And I think sometimes in music schools, it's the same thing, that we drill them with so much that they have to do that they forget that they actually love making music. And then, I've heard so many stories of people that come back to music in their older years, whether it be a New Horizons band, whether they find a community group, and they just want to play and be and hang and get that, all the hairs on the back of my neck are standing up. And, so I think the concept of communal participatory music making is a human right, a human need. How we do that, let's be careful.
Well, absolutely. And that's kind of going into the next things and getting away a little bit, if we can, from the professionals for a little bit here. And let's kind of go back to those of us that do this because we love it. And because there is a huge movement in the world of that. It's even ancestral, I think, in some ways. Some people seem to be, we were just talking about that, some people seem to just naturally have the need to have music in their lives. They're born with it, even if they don't have it in their DNA, let's just say, like your parents or my parents, that kind of a thing.
It was in there somewhere, I swear.
Yeah. But it is very much studied, and it's proven that it's a human basic need to have music or to have rhythm or something in within them. It's also part of our culture. We celebrate with music. We use music for so many things. The military bands are a good example of this. There's beautiful music for inaugurations, for funerals, for anything that has to do with what we do in our lives. And if you can take that and put that into your community music, music is very important. I firmly believe that is something that is inherent. I really think that rhythm is very important. Movement, dance, showing your art, like you were sharing with me that you're also an artist in painting, those kinds of things. That's where I keep coming back personally to community music, not just community band, but the communing together of the arts, because it is so basic. I mean, do you feel that way? Do you think it's a basic thing in all humans to have the arts somehow?
Yeah, I mean, I think all the humanities teach us how to be human, right? And what that means to socialize and understand other people's feelings, be empathetic, communicate without words. I mean, sure. I mean, I'm not sure it's up there with food and shelter if we had an apocalypse, but I think we would find a way to commune and make music. I mean, I think that you might enjoy a book called Why We Love Music. John, I can't think of his name. I picked it up at Tanglewood.
Okay.
And it turns out one of the reasons we love music is repetition. Fascinating, right?
Yeah. Right.
It's fascinating because I've walked around conferences and I hear people dissing music, for instance, at Midwest.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so repetitious. Like, really?
Right.
Have you heard Mozart? That guy had a lot of repeats.
Yeah.
But and one of the other ones is rhythm. Like it has a good beat and I can dance to it. Is a cliche, but it actually is one of the reasons we love music as humans. I mean, there's lots of studies about music in the brain and the fact that our brain can predict what's coming next, and therefore that's why we dig it, right? Why we're moved by it, whether that be sadness, joy, dancing, movement. There's lots of studies on our pulse and why, why our bodies react to that and our brain waves and all that sort of stuff. But I think it's, scientifically, yes, I think that's very interesting, but more from a humanities point of view, that's when we come back. Can music save the world? Yes. I really believe it because we learn how to be together and do something higher than our individual selves together.
There we go.
And that is beauty. Yeah. And it speaks to the soul every time.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's concerning to me that I'm seeing within at least the United States, I'm seeing especially our community colleges of them taking the liberal arts away and making it more of a get a trade, which is very important. And I firmly support that. However, you take away the liberal arts, you're taking away a lot of things you just discussed. And, you take away that part of a human that is there, but just needs to have the opportunity to be developed or given the opportunity to have an opportunity to do it in the arts of some sort. So, yeah, so that's kind of where I was at. Let's go back for just a moment. I think we've already talked about this, but a few people have shared a few things that I want to talk about, and it has to do with why the arts have to fight so much for support. So let's go there. I know we both, being in the arts for so many years, we've all had to fight for that. So I put down, someone was mentioning that they tried to get in to use one of the high school band rooms for their community band and weren't allowed to, so they went to a different school. Was anyone else having these kinds of problems? Finding funding to be able to buy percussion or to borrow percussion, things like this. The basic question that I think is, though, why do the arts have to fight so hard to get money, even nationally, internationally? You have any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know how intelligent they're going to be, but I think that there has been, and I hesitate to use this word, but I'm going to use it anyway, a lack of relevance in the arts. And so when we have a band program, an orchestra program, choral program, whatever, the three, supreme large ensembles, and they just do the festival, the competition, and a certain type of music that may or may not relate to a larger group of students or the community, for instance.
Right.
then the principals and other leaders in school go, tell me why this is important again. I mean, we know why, but if we're not communicating why, we have to get better at this.
Yes.
Then our principals and the people that hold the purse strings are going to say no.
Right.
This is why I think actually it's fascinating in the States, moving there, the whole band and football thing is huge. Like, nobody's going to take away the band if they got a good football. Nobody is going to touch the band. Why? Because they are supporting the football, but it's bigger than that. A lot of, elite musicians go, oh, give me a break, supporting football. I go, come on. It's Friday night football. It brings the entire community together. Whatever you think about football, I mean, a bunch of people battering around on a field. But it's spirit, it's community, it's rooting for the team, it's all that stuff. Nobody's going to touch the band in Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi. Nobody's touching the band. Canada, it's a different thing. We don't, well, we do football, but it's not Georgia. Right. No. And so this is where I come back to, of course, music for music's sake, but how can we be relevant? Again, I hesitate to use that word because relevance isn't just bringing hip hop into your band room, although that's cool. It's how can you be relevant in your communities? How can you become indispensable to your communities? That's the key. I mean, at Georgia, they didn't necessarily have live music for their convocation. It went back and forth. And I said, we'll do it. We'll do it every year. We will be the soundtrack to this extremely important event for so many families, so many faculty, so many staff, so many students. We will be that soundtrack, and we became indispensable. Right. Exactly. So finding ways for community bands or whatever to whatever the music making is to be absolutely indispensable in the community. And that may mean going like Deanna Yerichuk's at Laurier's project, where she went into quote unquote inner city, Kitchener, Waterloo, and did Guyane drumming. Unbelievable transformation and a transformative experience. Right. Right. So well, and figuring out in that community, what is it? Like we did the hip hop project. We did the hip hop project in Athens, Georgia. Absolutely superbly successful, amazing, intersection between the independent hip hop scene in Athens, which is incredible, and the Ivory Tower, right? But what is it? What is it in Michigan? What is it in Texas? Is it mariachi in Southern California that you can start to make some partnerships and do some cool music other than the band music that you're getting at JW Pepper? No offense, JW Pepper, but can we start commissioning composers to do some out of the box thinking? Can we have our students do some composition? Right. Of course we can. Absolutely. And sometimes I think it's good to survey your ensemble and just say, what are some of the things that you're also involved in besides what you do, and find out what else is out there in the community. Most of us live within our community as well, so we do kind of know. And it doesn't have to be every concert, but it certainly shows the interest. And then it gets that other group of people coming or hearing you or seeing you, like you were just sharing. And then they, like you did in Georgia, and they're like, oh, well, these musicians can do this, some of these kind of things too. And usually always ends up being really fun and exciting, and the other people are so grateful and so on. I think that's part of it too. So we can always, you have to look at what is your structure within where you are, and then see how it can fit. And most of us do those things, I firmly believe, but it isn't just service, it's also cultural. And that's what you were sharing there. And I think that's it becomes a service from that, but find out what your culture is, then the arts can fit into the culture. Yeah, that's really, I was looking through some things, and I would like to know what this means. Crowdsourcing rehearsals. This was something that apparently you did somewhere, and I don't know where even, but I went, ooh, I don't know what that is. Share what that is. Well,
please.
Yeah, I mean, I tell this story a lot, but at Cornell, I was a beta tester for Google Glass. I mean, we don't know what Google Glass is. In some ways, it was a failed experiment, except I don't believe in failed experiments because you always learn something. But a
Right.
Google Glass was essentially something that Google made. You're wearing your phone on your face, basically. It's a pair of
I saw it. It
glasses,
was
and
cool. Yeah.
has a little screen, and it was super cool. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, you know, you could put the score in the glass, and you could see through the score to the musicians. Wouldn't be that cool? It wasn't. It didn't work. We did some cool things where we embedded a metronome. Because if you tap behind your ear, that's how Google Glass, that's how you heard Google Glass. And so we embedded a metronome, and that was kind of cool to get beat and time in young conductors, for instance. We did some other cool stuff. But anyway, as a result of that, we had, I went to a presentation from some Google folks, and they said, imagine a man from the 19th century is plopped up from his time and put down a time machine in Times Square, present day Times Square. Everything about that person's experience would be mind-blowing, right? The cars, the fashion, the noise, the lights, the neon, the advertisement. It would just be overwhelming, right? The development that has made, like it or leave it or hate it, it would be mind-blowingly strange, right?
Yeah, I'm sure.
And then they said, now plop up that same person and put him in a classroom. And he would know pretty much. I mean, there's a whiteboard instead of a blackboard, and maybe the chairs are done a different way, but really it would not be mind-blowingly strange. And that got me thinking about what has changed and what has not changed in education, curriculum, how we do it, everything from seating to pedagogy, of course. Right. And then I thought, okay, well, what if a guy was plopped up from the Sousa band, because it would be a guy, trombone player from the Sousa band, and he was put in, and he dropped down in my rehearsal. Yeah. Would it be mind-blowingly strange? No, he would know where to sit. He would wonder why there were females in the band. There's that. He might wonder why there's so much percussion. What's with all the percussion? But basically, he would know where to sit, how to behave, what to do. The repertoire would be different. And it was like one of the many pedagogical crises I've had in my life. And that got me thinking about all sorts of things. So including student engagement, because again, these music advocacy folks say that music is more engaging, right? When your student is doing something, actively doing something, they're more engaged. Yeah, maybe, but I say how we have been doing, at least American and Canadian band music, which is top down. Here's another article, an article by Randall Alsop and Kathy Benedict, 2008, The Problems with Band. That created quite a stir, and I thought a lot of it was dead on. Again, standing on a box with a stick, telling them what to do, when to do, and to get ready for this standardized test, which is our concert, and then we do the next rotation, and like on and on and on we go. And just because that person is sitting in your trombone section playing an instrument doesn't mean, in my opinion, they could be as engaged, as deeply engaged as they could be. And so when I say crowdsourcing, it was like, and I just was terrible at this when I first started at Cornell. I started asking more questions in ensembles, and got the blank look, zero eye contact. And just I'm like, no, like, is this a 4-measure phrase or two measure phrases? And the kids would look like, if they looked at me at all. And finally, I asked a bunch of the student leaders, like, here's what I'm feeling. I feel like I need more. I'd love you to be more engaged in the process. And the answers that came back were, we've never been taught this way in band, so we don't know what you want. I think all day. I just want to come and play. I don't want to think. Holy cow. And it's your job. You're the expert. Talk about traditional, right? And then I moved to some of these conversations to a virtual space, because let's face it, the students that we're dealing with today do not know a world without social media or the internet, unlike
Right,
us.
exactly.
I don't know who else is in the room. And so many of them are more comfortable in a virtual space. There are lots of students during the pandemic that liked it. They liked Zoom. Like, no thanks, but they liked it. And so I got the conversation going anonymously in a virtual space. And long story short, it started to transfer into the real space, quote unquote, real space.
Good.
And it changed things. So, I mean, and I do scramble rehearsals all the time. And first time I did that at Georgia with all these DMA students, I thought, oh, they're going to hate this. And they loved it. It just changes perceptions. It makes you think and hear differently. And if one of the reasons we rehearse is to create musical independence and deep listening, change the seating.
Yeah, I was just going to say, would you share what your way of scramble rehearsals are for the people that are listening today?
Yeah, it's super fun, but it's amazingly effective. You can't sit in the same row that you normally sit in, and you can't sit beside a like instrument. So I do this with honor bands all the time, and they have to introduce themselves. The introverts hate it, but and it changes the listening. Like, you have to find your section. Tubas always come to the front. It's fascinating. Which is trumpets and trombones come to the front. And a very interesting thing was said when I did this at the American Band College with a bunch of educators getting their masters, right? Tuba, trombones, and percussion came to the front, and they said, I've always been jealous of what seems to be this private talk that happens between the conductor and the flutes
and the oboes. And
it's like, yes, like,
I
want you to talk to me like that. And who do we, there's all these stereotypes, but the farther you go back in the band, the more the behavior changes.
That's true.
Why is that? Maybe they're not feeling that intimacy that you're so change up the seating. If you're having trouble with a march, sit the band in a circle, put the snare drum and the bass drum in the middle, and watch the pulse just. So, I mean, that's a little thing that you can do to change it up, to get students and musicians' ears listening across, back, front. We're always saying to the front row, listen to the back row. Well, what if everybody's all around? So, you can find out who hasn't got a copy of their music. You can, get off the podium, walk around, watch the posture change when you do that.
Oh, yeah.
I have a couple of articles on this that you can dig up. That's got a series of things that you can do to get more. And one of them actually was, I started every semester with a questionnaire. To your point, Gail, tell me 3 things I should know about you. I found out at Cornell that there was a student whose mom was, stage 4 cancer. That was important to know. I found out there was a kid who was teaching sailing. Ooh.
Good to know that kid.
Well, first, yes, but also wind and water and all those metaphors. I found out there was a kid who was working on a novel. She was a science major working at this Cornell, working on a novel, because that's the Cornell kid. Did I get her to write program notes? Hell yeah.
Of course.
All that kind of stuff, right? That you can, and just taking the time to say, wow, she wants to know 3 things. How do you think that you should be assessed in this course? How do you think, what are your expectations of me? What should be my expectations of you? I got students choosing music for programs. I put together a program about food, climate change, whatever. I had a slot of a 7 or 10 minute piece. I chose 3 pieces that would sort of fit, right? And sent them out, right? Listen to these 3 pieces with, I hesitate to say copies of the score, because of course I bought hundreds of copies of the score, but and you get them listening to 3 wind pieces that you think are quote unquote quality, and you get to teach a little bit of democracy, right? Here's the vote. Everybody voted number 2. Well, I didn't vote on number 2. Well, let's talk about democracy and how messy it is. Right?
That's right.
There was, there's more buy-in into that piece.
Yeah, and
rather
all
than
of these.
Using it all the time, right?
Absolutely. And all these things you're saying, I absolutely would feel comfortable trying with my adult ensembles. In fact, they would find it to be interesting. I think the thing that I love about being a conductor of a community ensemble of adults is one, the resources available are incredible. I mean, I have people who can edit videos. I have doctors. I have people who can, you know what I'm saying, because they aren't all professional musicians, they bring a wealth of experience and joy and fun and all of this to you, that if you know what they have, it'll only make the ensemble better and what you want to do. If you want to travel or you want to do programs that are really extensive, you have a lot of that, and that's a resource. Again, why community music is community music, because of the wealth of resources that you have, and that those kind of things you're talking about. The scramble idea, it would be very interesting. I mean, usually if I say, okay, horns, you're going to sit over here now because I'm going to try this and I want this piece to be with that, for a while they would complain, but after a while they kind of got used to some of that. But I really love the idea of just mixing it up totally and letting people sit where they want to sit. It doesn't have to be how we acoustically will do the final performance, but it certainly allows them to get an opportunity. So that stuff is wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, and also watch a tuba's player's face when they look beside the clarinet player and go, dang, that's a lot of notes. How do you do that?
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
And the clarinet player looks at the tuba part and goes, that's not very many notes and they're all white. How do you do that?
Yeah.
Right.
And
it's very interesting conversations can happen amongst the group.
Absolutely.
I mean, the other thing about marching bands that are so cool, that's so, you know, there's all sorts of student leadership that happens on the field. You got drum majors, you got section leaders, you got, you know, it's amazing. And then for some reason, when we bring it into the wind ensemble or the concert band or whatever, we forget all that. Like, facilitating leadership amongst the students in the, you know, just lots more leadership, like, you know, leaning in, and a lot more stuff that we can facilitate when we get into our indoor ensembles.
Oh yes, it all continues to go through what you learn if you're in good ensembles, continues on in the community ensembles. It just does. And if you find that and can do more with it, then more glory to the ensemble for sure. So coming on down to this, a lot of it, when you get to the community part of it, it's fun with others. I mean, let's just take away the quality of what we're doing, which is not always hard. It's hard to do, to separate your music, but being together. I have a number of people in my band who say, this is my bowling night, because I can talk my talk with people that understand music. They, you know, and they come and they're so joyful. So there's that side of it too, that I think community music offers people, is that they get that chance to do that. Especially we see in the community bands, people who were in a band program, maybe in college even, but went on in their lives, had their children, and are coming back and haven't played for sometimes 50 years, but they want to come back badly because that was so important to them way back then. And they still want to feel that feeling that they had. I have people that join all the time for those reasons. And they're always very serious when they come in. I'm you know, would you like to speak to that at all?
Well, this concept of fun is fascinating. I mean, it wasn't always fun in my ensembles. You know, and part of that, at least early in my career, and to some extent, even by the time I got to Georgia, we have to remember that in many cases, and this is a hard thing to get over, is that your own self-worth is tied up into your ensemble's performance. I repeat, your own self-worth as the conductor can be tied up into the ensemble's performance, and that is dangerous territory. Granted, we are judged by that performance, and I get that, but when we start attaching our self-worth to our students or a community band's success or lack thereof, this is when we get into dangerous territory. And that was me when I first started out. And there were even days at the University of Georgia, certainly my first year, when I was quote unquote proving myself, like, oh my gosh, right? So I think that element isn't necessarily, although it could be part of community bands, you're over that, right? You are there to you know, make a quote unquote quality experience, a great process, a great performance. But your self-worth as a conductor isn't tied up into that. Like you've just been there, done that. That is very freeing about reaching a certain age, isn't it?
Sure,
But I was just actually went on a run this morning, and in my earbuds is Coach Bennett, because he's the Nike head coach and he's helping me train. And he talked about fun the entire run. You know, you're like, oh my God, 7K, right? And the whole time is he's emphasizing fun. And remember how much fun it is to run fast? No, it's not. Oh, wait a second. Yes, it's really fun. Yeah, like, okay, 50 meters, that's all I got. But you're like super fun. Like I'm running to the ice cream truck. I remember that, right? Or I'm racing my sister. I remember that. Yeah. So this concept of training and getting better as a runner, he makes, at least for this particular run, super fun. And I'm not sure we always do that in at least higher ed music, and certainly high school music. Right. But I think this is where community bands do a great job.
They do. Yeah. And it allows the community, like if you have summer concerts, let's just, for an example, you can program for things that go on, or you can find ways to include the community somehow within your performance, things like that. And that is fun. And you know, we could, like, what's the definition of community music? Well, what's the definition of fun? You know, I mean, it can be so big and so broad, and you can decide what that is and how you want it to be part of your ensemble, of course. One of the things,
one more thing before we leave this that I just happened to me last week. I was fortunate enough to conduct the Kitchener-Waterloo Symphony, which is a very fine orchestra. But it was in composer readings. There were 5 of our student composers who wrote like a 5 to 7 minute piece for orchestra. We partnered with the Kitchener-Waterloo Orchestra, and I was the conductor in the reading and rehearsal of these pieces. Yeah, it was wonderful. So there's that aspect of it. What an opportunity. There's not every day that student composers, undergraduates, have the opportunity to hear their work performed by a professional orchestra. But from the get-go, I said to the orchestra, these students invite your input. Like if you see a range issue, if you see something that's unusual in this viola part, or, you know, and there was so much input from the musicians in this professional orchestra. And I'm not kidding, at least 8 or 9 of them came up to me and said, that was so fun.
See, yep, there you go.
We aren't necessarily asked for our input when we're getting ready for a concert. And I like, that was so profound for me. A, fun, B, that, you know, that treadmill of rinse, lather, repeat that professional orchestras are on, many of them, that they've got to get this concert ready, and they have 3 rehearsals to do it, and boom, you do the gig. Like, it was just fascinating that there was they were so engaged in that process. Very cool.
I have something that I've always done as an adult with people, and I love doing it. I have my master's actually is in large group communication, and one of the things that I really love to do is just ask people questions and find out who they are and why they are. And sometimes it's even very, very inward people that wouldn't necessarily want to start telling you things. If you can find that common thread somehow, you know. But to your point with the musicians there, I find that most people do like to share things that they love, or about them, or something in their lives that they felt important, or that they want to educate somehow. I think there's a lot of, I think probably the parenting naturally within us has to do with the educator in us. And even if you aren't a parent or you're not a teacher, I think we naturally have that. That helps keep our race going, you know. But I find with that, very often people do want to share those things. And those people that said to you, this was so much fun, they don't get that opportunity to share their knowledge, and probably think about the knowledge that any musician at that level would have, and the give and take from that composer to the student or to the musician. It just had to be a happy time. I mean, it really was. So, you know, having fun with others, that togetherness, the happiness, the joy, the smiles. Smiles usually always tell me that they had fun, you know, one way or another. Those happy endorphins that can only make our communities better places to be when we do those kinds of things. And it brings that community together and hopefully makes it maybe a little more peaceful. You know, you would hope. I mean, you go back to, as I said, the drum corps saying this is what we're going to do. You know, American Legions and the VFWs are what started drum corps to help it to be a little more peaceful. So there weren't kids, you know, that weren't happy out there doing things that they shouldn't do. So there's that side of it too.
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
one of the things that Deanna Yerchuk has taught me at Laurier, she's coordinator of the undergraduate community music program. And in that book, Community Music Beyond the Boundaries, or At the Boundaries, I can't remember what it's called, that Lee wrote, also wrote.
Right,
also,
yes. It's a great book.
Yeah, it is a great book. But one of the things that Deanna writes about in her chapter that got me thinking is that when we have communities that are tight, they are naturally exclusive. And that was like, oh boy, because when you talk about like drum corps today, right? That is,
well, yeah. Oh, that's
right?
a whole different, it's an animal.
That is one tight group. By the time they're finished touring in that summer, that is one tight group, and try to break into that. So I think we have to be careful when we talk about community, when we say inclusive communities, who are we naturally excluding when we talk about inclusivity?
Exactly.
It's hard to get your head around, but it was just a fascinating thing to think about, you know.
It is.
Yeah.
And as long as I think the people that are involved as the leaders or everyone just continues to think, I want to be inclusive. I want people to be part of what we do. If that's one of your goals or for your ensemble, then hopefully that would allow for people to find their way into that and be happy through that. Well, this has just been thrilling to have the opportunity to talk to you. I hope you've had a chance to talk a little bit about the things that you thought we would talk about today. Do you feel that that community music can save the world, and what would you offer as a suggestion to our members that are listening and the people that will watch this in the future? What are some things that you so profoundly would like to say about that?
Oh, good Lord.
Put you on the spot.
No kidding. I mean, first of all, I'm not sure the world needs saving. Maybe. I just think that when we are together doing music, whatever that might mean culturally in the community, because as you wisely point out, the cultural aspect of collective music making and why music is so important in communities has a cultural basis, right? That I think that more of that with more people will make a difference. It just has to make a difference. And how we do it, I don't know. I think we're having those conversations at Laurier, and they are very important and very interesting conversations about what community music is, for whom and how. But I'd love to say something profound, but I'm not sure it's in me. I mean, I think that, I don't know if music can save the world. I think it can. It saved me. But I think how we have done music in higher education for the few is not the answer.
Yes, yeah, I can understand it. I mean, there's times when I've talked with my own faculty or my own colleagues, and we jokingly say, if we could take whatever country that there's having their problems, or if there's a war or whatever, and give them an instrument and take that away, how much happier they would be. You know, it's all about power and money, and we know that. That's the way it's been forever. It's just also part of what humanity is, unfortunately. But like the Renaissance and some of the times that allowed for what we love to do and why we're in this is still obviously there in our world, and it's important. And I would encourage people to continue to keep doing, obviously, what we do, which is to make music, to commune with others with our art, and keep doing what we do live, and finding the funding for it, because it can be done. I mean, it's difficult, but it's certainly worth it
Oh,
in my mind.
it's definitely there. I mean,
Yeah.
one of the things that we're excited to launch at Laurier is this navigating the music industry ecosystem. So students can get a Part 1 and a Part 2 certificate in navigating the music industry. But music schools in general don't teach kids this, how to read a contract, the questions asked when you're signing a contract, how to pick a manager, entrepreneurship, and there's a whole course on free money. It's out there, right? Yeah, it's out
Right.
there. One of the
Right.
reasons I hesitate to say anything profound about this is because I don't think you can talk about it without talking about religion and politics. Those are like, I'm not going to go there
Oh, I
because
understand.
I think capitalism is not necessarily working. But who was it? Was it Winston Churchill that said democracy? What was the thing about democracy is I can't remember the quote. Somebody put it in the chat. It's terrible, but it's better than all the other kind of modes of government out there, or something like that. I can't remember the quote. I've lost it.
Yeah.
Now I obviously don't sound profound, but these things that we're dealing with that are so divisive right now in Canada, and please don't think Canada is perfect. It is not. But particularly in the United States where we're watching it, I'm not sure if you put everybody in a room making music that all of our problems would go away, but they would go away for an hour.
That's right.
And that's something.
Right.
That's something.
Here's the quote that our host put on. Democracy is the worst form of government.
There you go.
Except for all the others that have been tried.
There you go.
That's the quote. Absolutely.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
That is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Well, I want to thank you, Cindy, so much. What a joy to have you involved. Cindy is a new member of ACB, and we're just thrilled to have you here, and always sharing our knowledge and our love of what we do. Is there a way, if someone wants to contact you more on the topic of perhaps Laurier and these degrees, is there a way they can find that information?
I just put my email in the chat.
There we go. Thank you.
If you Google or DuckDuckGo, if you don't want someone tracking your data, Faculty of Music at Laurier, you'll get to our website and you can read all about the programs. We're very excited about the music certificate coming. We're very excited about the PhD in music, community music and music therapy. That's another thing we didn't talk about, Gail, what I'm learning about music therapy.
Please.
Wow.
Share a little bit of that.
Well, I mean, it's just, it's a burgeoning field. I mean, Laurier has the oldest music therapy program in the country, and a very, very strong program. And now a PhD in music therapy, which is not, you can't get music therapy, PhDs everywhere. So we're very excited about that. And there's actually a lot of intersection between community music and music therapy.
Oh, yes.
I think that there's lots of, lots of mining there to do with those two things and how they interact with the brain, the soul, the body, mental health, physical health. And but what I'm seeing and learning about music therapy, because it's so strong at Laurier, is like, wow, this could be it. This could, there are some amazing things being discovered. I mean, we've all seen that, with Alzheimer's patients, and they put this on and all of a sudden they're back at this place. And we just hired a faculty member who's, we all know this to be true, but he's proving it quantitatively. And that's going to be very interesting how there's maybe a funding stream, right? There's a lot of donors that want to fund music therapy for obvious reasons, right?
Absolutely.
So getting closer to that, tying in with that as community bands wouldn't be a bad idea. Absolutely.
Someone's just saying that in Scranton, PA, it has a very active music therapy program with what they do. And so, yes, and that is a way to do that. I mean, we're always looking for a way to find a grant here and there, and that might be a way to sponsor a concert, is to be involved somehow in that research in your own community, in whatever that might be, senior resources or
yeah. Can I just say one thing, and that is United Sound, if talking about relevance and not a dry eye in the place, and also funding. United Sound is an organization that Julie Duty put together many years ago. I think she's at least 10 years. It's 10 years old now, and it is music for differently abled people and students. I just got on the board of that, the advisory board, and I'm honored to do it. But you know, the first Navy Band concert at Midwest had a group of United Sound students play with the Navy Band.
I saw that. So wonderful.
Right. So I think it would be very interesting for you know, community bands to get involved with that in some way. So yeah, I'd like to partner with United Sound, and it's beautiful.
Wonderful. What a beautiful way to close off this ACB Connects conversation too. That is what it's about, is making music and making people happy, and including them in our love of what we do, for sure. So Cindy, thank you so very much for giving us your time today. We have I have thoroughly enjoyed talking with you, and I know that there will be more conversations as we get the opportunity. I am looking at that PhD program kind of hard, actually, to see if it might be something that could help the community music band world with some types of research for that specifically. So we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd like to talk with you about that, actually. If obviously maybe we could stay on and just talk about that, because I have specific questions for you in your level of interest. But yeah, this has been great. Thank you for the opportunity. It's a nice way to spend a snowy Sunday afternoon. I hope
I agree.
I agree. Interesting. Yeah, there's been stuff in the chat that I don't know if there's. I mean, we're probably out of time, but I don't know if there are any
some of the things that have been in the chat you were covering, and people were just conversation. So if you want to save the chat for yourself, it's kind of fun to see what they were saying. I didn't go in and specifically say anything. Some people were talking back and forth to one another about funding and various things about what they do for their schools and how they found us a place for their band. And see, this is another reason why we do this, is to get people connected. And so once again, I'd like to thank you so much.
Whoa, I'm just reading something. I don't think a halftime show would work at a hockey game, says Bob.
Bob.
Might generate some dark. Okay, Bob. Think about it. I have had this idea for a while. Like, I've had this idea for a while, a marching band on skates, chasing around the Zamboni. Are you kidding me? It would be fantastic. I think it would be great. I don't know why isn't that happening? I also had this idea that you don't need much at the diving championships, right? You just need a trombone and a cymbals. That's all you need. But I actually think a hockey game marching band would be super cool.
Well, there you go. He said I could see a video in my mind. And
awesome. So can I.
So good.
Yeah, totally. Well, get it on social media, and there's your relevance, right?
There we go. There we go. Yeah. Well, thanks again, Cindy. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks, everybody.
Yep. We'd also like to offer a very special thanks to the entire ACB Connects team that has made this happen today. Our next session will be a roundtable discussion featuring several ACB conductors from ACB bands around the country. They will discuss many topics of interest to community concert bands. You won't want to miss this opportunity to ask questions and gain insights to issues facing today's community bands. Mark your calendar for March 12th and watch for the announcement of this special roundtable session. Our conventions are fun, and in 2023, this year, the convention is going to be held in Orlando, Florida, May 17 through 21. Performing bands have been selected with concerts each evening. The tentative schedule of events is now available, and registration for the convention is open. You can find more information about the event on the ACB website. We invite you to join us in Orlando. Each year, ACB holds a membership meeting open to all members and members of ACB bands. We will hold this meeting via Zoom on June 4th, 2 weeks following the ACB convention. You're all welcome to listen, so get updates from ACB officers and ask any questions you may have. For the links mentioned today and to access all previously recorded sessions of ACB Connects, please visit our ACB website homepage, which is acbands.org. You'll also find information about becoming an ACB member if you're not, and details on future sessions of ACB Connects and a wealth of other resources. We'd love to have you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Spotify, and to have you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you for being with us today for this special opportunity to form new connections. We look forward to having you join us again right here at ACB Connects. And until then, happy music making.